What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go over P.U.N.K. I've really been enjoying this deck since it came out in the new pack, and I want to do this differently so I can show everybody what the deck looks like first, and then I'll show you guys the replays, because I actually wanted to talk about a couple of different things before we got into the replays. One of them being Ghost Ogre, and the other being this trap here, this other P.U.N.K trap. Just real quick, the Synchro level 8 Jam Dragon can actually search Ghost Ogre, and I know in the TCG that's typically what a lot of people will do. They will search Ghost Ogre using the Jam Dragon, and then that way you basically just like have a hand trap, especially against like the Sprite matchup, because Ghost Ogre is like the worst thing for Gigantic Sprite. So that's another reason why you'd want to search that card. As you can see, I don't run Ghost Ogre in this build, but I will be possibly swapping out a couple cards, maybe swapping out Nibiru or Triple Tactics Talent just to get, or maybe both even, to get Ghost Ogre put in here. The trap is actually a new addition to this build. I won't have it in any of the replay clips, but if you don't know what this trap does, basically you can target one set card your opponent controls, or if you control a P.U.N.K monster, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it. So really good. You're always gonna have a P.U.N.K monster on the field if this card is on the field. So you get a free pop, whether it's a a Runic Fountain or a starter like the level 2s that sprites are running right now to draw cards like Hyperia. But that's a really good card to have in the deck in general, just to be able to clean up stuff. So I've recently kind of teched that in. I was originally running 3 Droplet and 3 Imperm. And this was a 41 card deck, but I recently just dropped both of those, and then we added just that one trap. Another thing that you guys can do differently than what I have in this build is the YGO-DON. You don't have to run this at 1. Also the Madame Spider, don't have to run these at 1. I'm only doing them at 1 because I'm running 2 of the field spells, so if I do end up drawing them, it's just good to, I only really need 1 YGO-DON. If you have multiple YGO-DONs and you end up drawing a field spell, then you won't be able to proc this card's ability because it only searches for your spells. So that's just something that you can decide on whether or not you want your ratio to be at 2 or 1, but I'm gonna go with 1 of each of them because this is basically Pot of Greed on both your turn and your opponent's turn. As long as you're activating your monsters on the field, you can basically get +2 all the time. Alright, and then the last thing that I wanted to go over with you guys is with the hand trap ratios, you can really do whatever you want. I noticed that there's a lot of people that use Gamma in their builds. I personally do not like Gamma, only because it requires you to run 3 cards, and one of them is a Garnet. So if you don't end up drawing the, let's pull that up. Yeah, here we go. If you don't end up drawing this one and you end up getting this, which tends to happen to me a lot, and I've seen it in replays of other people playing it, it's just a dead draw. Even with your, this draw 2 here, which I'm going to show you guys, is so good that you really want anything that you could draw into to be useful. So drawing into something like Gamma, especially if you're going first, it's not great. So I don't like that card, but I have seen people use it. It's not unusable, but for me, it's a no. I just won't be using that card. As for the extra deck, there's a couple of slots in the extra deck that are also flexible. So there's not a surefire way that you have to play it. You just, for sure you have to have a Psychic and Punisher, at least one of those. And you need to have at least 2 of the Amazing Dragon, 2 of the Jam Dragon. Chaotic Ruler, it comes up sometimes, but not a lot. But it comes up enough for this card to, have a spot in the extra deck. You can also run Boral Load Dragon instead of the Draco Berserker. It's just an easy level 8 synchro for me to make, and it's actually useful because it banishes cards. Versus, a lot of times you may not go into your links at all. The smallest link you have is the IP. So if you're not able to go into your links, then the Boral Load kind of becomes useless because you need to have a link monster in the graveyard to be able to get your Boral Load counters. But that's all that I can really say about that. Those are slots that would be flexible. You know, you can kind of pick and choose how you want your links to be set up, or your other additional synchros to be set up. But this is just in general what I'm running. I would even say that you could possibly run another Psychic and Punisher, because this card is only unaffected when your life points are less than your opponent's or equal to your opponent's. So if you are playing somebody who, you know, maybe they use a Solemn Judgment, or you're going against a hero player and they use Hero's Lives and they end up, you know, halving their life points, then that immediately is going to make this card affected. So then it just becomes a 3500 beater and not an unaffected monster. So you gotta watch out for stuff like that. So you could possibly run 2 of these. Like I said, you just kind of want to look at your extra deck. I do actually have 2, but I haven't really seen the reason to run more than that. A lot of times when you're able to get this card out on the board, it's so hard to come back from your opponent drawing a couple times and then having an unaffected monster on the field. So, you know, it kind of goes either way. But that kind of does that for what I think about the deck. And this is just going to be the deck list at the beginning, so that you guys are able to look at what it is and then see how you play it. So let's go ahead and hop into the replays now, and we will start off with a hero player. So the first person that we're going to be going up against is going to be a hero player. Another thing I wanted to point out, it seems like I don't know what it is about this deck in particular, but people that I've played against and then myself, I feel like you get Maxi so often with this deck. I don't know what it is about this one in particular. I run Maxi at 3 in a lot of different decks. I do not see it as often as I do in this deck. It's almost every single hand, or if I'm going second, I'll draw into it. Like it's kind of strange, but I just wanted to point that out. So he's going to rip the Hero Lives off the top, and I'm going to Ash. The reason why I Ash right here instead of going for Maxi is because I want to see if they have Called by the Grave. Because if they have Called by the Grave and they hit the Ash, then I can feel better about using Maxi later. So I always want to use Ash first in that situation if I can, just to test for something like that. Now right here, he does end up using Triple Tactics. I probably should have used Maxi right then, but this was okay. We do end up still getting a draw, and he doesn't have an answer for it, so that's really dope. He's gonna go for Shadow Mist. Shadow Mist is gonna search for the Stratos, and then normal summon the Stratos and search. He doesn't want to play too far into Maxi because heroes, that's all they do is special summon, so he doesn't want to play into it, so he goes and just stops there. But at this point now, I have so many different options here, and without a good response, he just loses the game here. So we'll start with Ogre. Ogre's gonna grab the Xiamen, which I could have done literally anything here, but I just chose to go Xiamen. This is just kind of like your basic combo when you're doing this. You're gonna go Xiamen first, then you'll want to grab Foxy Tune. Foxy Tune will grab you the Shara. In this case, I already had the Foxy Tune, so I was just searching for whatever I wanted just to have an extra card in hand. Because another thing about this deck, you guys, is that you do want to have the Shara on the field going into the next turn, if you do make it to the next turn, because the Shara has a quick effect on your opponent's turn. You can synchro into a monster. So if we're on our opponent's turn, we're going to want to synchro into the Amazing Dragon, and then use the Amazing Dragon to then spin cards up to the amount of names that we have in the graveyards. We can just spin that many cards on the field back into the hand. So really good card to have going second for sure. He let me draw 1 the first time with this, but for whatever reason he decided to let me draw 1, but then the second time I go to draw, he then uses the Cosmic Cyclone, which is going to make him even weaker. I'm going to search for the trap just because he played that so strange. I was like, I don't know. Using the Jam Dragon to search, and then we're going to use the Deer Note to just bring back a monster. But once I realized, I think at first I didn't realize that he only had 3k life points left, and then once I did, I was like, oh, okay, let me just go into Amazing Dragon and spin these cards, and then the Carp will actually it'll let me target one of my Punk monsters on the field, and then that monster can make a second attack. So if you were to be able to do anything to get in front of this, I would have just been able to make another attack for 3k and then go for game. So that shows the power of this deck just a little bit, but let's keep going, show you guys even better replays to come. All right, now we get to go first. So this is a pretty decent hand. Having the crossout designator is what makes it so decent. But also having Foxy Tune is good because Xiamen, typically you're going to use Xiamen to search for Foxy Tune and then Foxy Tune to go into your Shara. But since we already have Foxy Tune, we can basically use the Xiamen as a free, there's a free card for Ash bait. But he doesn't end up having Ash, so that's alright. We're going to go ahead and use the Foxy Tune. He's then going to Maxi, which is awesome because we have crossout designator. So Maxi is useless to him. And we're going to bring out the Shara. Shara is going to activate to use itself and the Xiamen to then bring out the Carp. Carp is going to tribute itself to bring out the YGO-DON and Deer Note. That's going to search us the field spell. Now we'll be able to use our Pot of Greed. Go into the Jam Dragon. Jam Dragon's going to search, and then Deer Note's going to re-summon the Carp back onto the field. Now, I could have used Deer Note to put the Shara back on the field, but I ended up using the Carp instead. There wasn't any real particular reason for that. That's just the card that I chose to bring out. And then we'll use the Madame. Madame's going to search another negate. And then we'll just go into Psychic and Punisher. We have so much card advantage with the amount of negates that we have. We have negate, 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 plus negate. So 5 monster negates, an unaffected monster, and then we also have our draw 2 as well. Because one thing about the Jam Dragon that I haven't seen a lot done, but it is pretty cool. Jam Dragon says that when it's in the graveyard, if your opponent activates a card or effect in response to your P.U.N.K card or an effect activation, this card can special summon itself. So if I would have used Deer Note instead to put back the Shara, and say my opponent were to respond to one of my cards, I would then be able to bring back Jam Dragon and then use Shara and Jam Dragon to go into my Amazing Dragon. But with the amount of monster negates that we have right now, it's not very likely that our opponent's going to be able to do much. But they are running Sprite. But can Sprite play? Can they play through 5 negates? I don't think so. So we're going to end perm, stopping the Sprite Blue, to which they're going to now go into Gigantic Sprite, activating Gigantic Sprite, and we will negate that as well. There's 3 negates so far, and we're still playing. He goes into battle phase, main phase, and then realizes that it's just, there's nothing else that he's going to be able to do. Alright, we're going into game number 3. Hand does not look terrible. The only thing that really does suck about this hand is not having drawn into Xiamen, just because that would have been a little bit better card to have here. Especially since we already have Deer Note in hand, but this is still a very, very functional hand. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the E-Telly, because E-Telly is going to be able to get us the Xiamen, and they're going to max E. And that's the, normally, like, when I'm saying whether or not a hand is good or bad, I'm taking into account that my opponent may have hand traps. So in this instance, if my opponent were to have Ash instead of max E here, and they Ash this E-Telly, I'm not out of plays, but it does take away, you know, a big focal point of the deck, because I would be unable to use one of my main starters. But in this case, we do have Ash to deal with the max E, so we're okay to do whatever we want. We just want to set up the most optimal board possible, and that is going to involve getting out the Xiamen to grab our Foxy Tune. Foxy Tune is then going to special summon. We are using, I'm also wanting to save my my normal summon as well, because using the Foxy Tune here, knowing that I already had 2 Shara, I can just throw away 1 Shara and grab YGO-DON so that I can go ahead and set up my Pot of Greed, right? So now that that's out, I can go ahead and use this to go into my fusion, and this card gets to stay on the field. That's going to give us a draw. We'll activate the Carp. Now we can grab Madame and Deer Note. Madame's going to be able to search. We'll be able to get a negate, and we'll be able to draw once again. So now our draw 2, and we were able to get 2 negates out of that. Now we go into Jam Dragon. Jam Dragon's going to search. And we're going to grab the carp back out of the grave with the deer note, and we're just going to resummon the carp on the field just for next turn. And then we'll grab Xiamen. We'll activate the field spell to banish a card to then summon out of our hand, and then we will synchro into Psychic in Punisher. Now again, like I said before, with the Jam Dragon, in a case like this, you do actually want to put the Jam Dragon in the graveyard instead of the carp, only because the Jam Dragon can bring itself back if your opponent activates a card in response to one of your cards. So Jam Dragon is the better card to have in the grave here. Deep Sea Diva, so of course we're going to be going up against sprites again, pure sprites looks like. I'm gonna just negate that, then gonna go for Swap Frog. He already had the Ronin Totem in the hand. And then he goes for Gigantic Sprite. He's going to activate. We're just going to ask the Gigantic Sprite. So we're doing pretty good putting a stop to the plays here. He's going to activate the Ronin Totem. And I know that he doesn't have any more frogs in the grave. So now this is going to be completely useless. So now that I'm going to negate the Jet, and he's already activated, we can now use our Shara. We don't want to use our Shara until they've wasted their normal summon and then they've gone into a couple of different plays before we actually go to do this. Because we don't want any kind of recursion. And we know with sprites, they need that level 2 card out before they can special summon again. So if there are any other sprite monsters in the hand, he will not be able to use any of them. And because we threw the Ronin Totem back into the hand, that Swap Frog that goes to the graveyard is completely useless to him now. So really good game against another pure sprite build. And yeah, now you guys are seeing how strong the punks can be. Alright, looks like we are going first. And let's check it out. So see, this is definitely a better hand. Already having the field spell is really good. E-Telly, really good. We need E-Telly at 3. That would make this deck even stronger, having this at 3. Because you're basically just guaranteeing yourself a starter. And this card is also not once per turn. If you have 2 E-Tellys, you can activate both. So really good ways to get into your plays as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with the field spell. Then activate E-Telly. E-Telly is going to grab Xiamen. And you've seen this story before. He's going to imperm. I kind of don't want this to get negated only because I only have Deer Note and I don't know what my draw is going to be. So I'm actually going to stop the impermanence here just in case, you know, I draw into something that's not usable. So I guarantee myself that search and then I end up drawing into another Deer Note. So all good there. And then we get to get a Shara. Shara is going to use the Deer Note in hand and the Xiamen because we want to keep the Shara on the field. We'll be able to draw 1, drawing into a Maxi. And we get the Madame, which is going to search for a negate. And then we go into the Jam Dragon. Jam Dragon is going to search. We still have our normal summon, by the way. That's another great thing about having E-Telly. You get to save that normal summon for a really long time. Plus, you get an additional normal summon with your field spell. So very good here. And we just go straight into Psychic and Punisher, set both negates, and we're good to go. So, what did we accomplish? Now we already have our level 8 on the field. We have the Jam Dragon in the graveyard. We've got 2 negates set up, Maxi, and an unaffected monster. So, very, very tough board to get around. Activates Moye, so of course we're going up against Sword Soul. I'm going to activate Maxi. The reason that I'm activating Maxi instead of going for a negate on the Moye, we all know how strong Sword Soul can be. So I might as well go for something that they have to respond to. Otherwise, they're going to have to end these plays pretty soon. Because going up against 2 back row and Maxi is pretty gross. As soon as the token comes out, I just go ahead and go for the Shara into Amazing Dragon. And Amazing Dragon is just going to spin the Moye back to the hand. And get rid of the token. And I'm going to draw another. It's going to summon Ashuna. Linking off Ashuna into Monk of Tenyi. Now he's going to use the Long Yuan. I honestly think that using the Long Yuan would have been better in this situation instead of him going for the Ashuna first. But maybe I'm not sure, because if you think about what he just did, he gave me basically a +2 before setting up, you know, one of his boss monsters. So I think it might have been better to actually do this in reverse. Because what he could have done instead is, while the token is out with Long Yuan on the field, he could have used his Ashuna, banished it, and then gone into, since he went into the Cheng Ying anyway instead of Baron, so Ashuna would have locked him into worm monsters only. But this is what he ended up summoning anyway, so it would have been better to actually use the Ashuna while the token was out, to then get Vishuda, then go Vishuda into Monk while the boss monster is already out. That way he would have been able to banish a card on the field. But you know, it's not that it matters, but I do think that that would have been the better way to play this. I'm gonna go ahead and negate this guy so that he doesn't get frisky trying to banish stuff. Not that he could do anything to my boss monster, and that's, of course, that's just gonna clean it up. That's just the cherry on top, right? Because what do you do in a situation like that when you're under max C? But it's Sword Soul. They typically are able to play through anything, and they were going second, so I'll take the win on that one. All right, last game, and we are going against the most hated deck in the world, Runic Sprite. But we are going first. Of course, they have Ashe. Not that Ashe is going to do anything because we already have the Foxy Tune in hand, and we have 2 droplets. Don't need 2 droplets, so we can just get rid of that. We'll activate this using itself, because I only run 1 Wagon, so I don't want to use the Wagon that's in the hand, because I would not be able to get my field spell, which I'm going to be searching for now. So that is why we ended up using the Shara instead of the Wagon there. Now we'll go into the Jam Dragon. Jam Dragon will activate. Dear Note will bring back the Shara. And then that's going to search for the Madame. We'll activate the field spell to draw a card, and then we will activate it to banish and normal summon the Madame, searching for another negate. And this is also another reason why I dropped down to just 2 droplet, because every time I run multiple copies of droplet and imperm, or every time I run them at 3 specifically, I find myself always having multiple copies of the card in hand. So that's exactly why I chose to do this at 2 instead of 3. But nevertheless, we go into Psychic and Punisher, and then we set to and pass. And Hyperia, we're going to go ahead and negate Hyperia. And because it's Runic, they actually did this to themselves. Activating that card is actually going to bring out the Jam Dragon, because as I said, it's like a hidden effect that people don't know about. But the Jam Dragon will activate because you activated a card in response to my card's activation. So Jam Dragon is back, and Jam Dragon will also search. So we're going to activate Jam Dragon to search, which is going to trigger our draw 1, which is going to be an Ashe. They ended up setting up the fountain. We activate Shara. That gets us into Amazing Dragon. Activate Amazing Dragon, and we're going to spin all 3 cards, and we're also going to draw 1. Into another Ashe. Send all the cards back to the hand, and because it's Runic Sprite, they got a lot of gas, but not when it comes to this. So he was not able to overcome all his cards being spun back to the hand, effectively making him lose the game. No follow-up. What do you guys think about Runic Sprite also? Let me know down in the comments below. Should Fountain be limited to 1 or 2? I've been saying that it needs to be limited to 1, especially because in this variant that we just went up against, the Sprite Runic only plays it at 2. But I do think because that's like the strongest deck in the game right now, it does need to be limited to 1 to kind of like balance everything out. Because drawing 3 or even drawing 2 multiple times like that is just, it's terrible. All right, so we're back. thank you guys for watching. I just wanted to show you guys one last time the deck list. Like I said, you can move around the nib. As you see, we never got nib, we never got triple tactic talent in any of those games, and even to this day, I don't think that I've been able to really utilize these cards. So like I said, these are very flexible. If you want, you can just replace these with Ghost Ogre. Since you're able to search Ghost Ogre, it could make the deck a little bit more consistent, and it does make the matchup against Sprite a lot better, having Ghost Ogre to deal with the gigantic Sprite, especially if you get to just search it. So definitely good slots that you could swap out there. But that'll do it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, leave a like down below, comment if you are new, subscribe if you're new, and click the little bell so you guys are notified every time a video is uploaded. Thank you guys so much. Peace.
Forget what they doing, keep on doing.